Miss Heivly, how are you, man?
Not too bad yourself. Happy Tuesday.
Yeah, I know. I have to do the same thing. I have to like kind of look up and think, what day is it today? I got to come down with a system for figuring out what day it is. I haven't figured that part out yet. So,
Well, buddy tells me just in that same semi-retired state, when you don't, you're doing it well when you don't know what day it is.
yes. Okay. Now, talk about retirement state. I've made a huge financial decision last week. I decided I am never going to retire. I'm just going to start sleeping in longer. That's it. That's my idea.
Yeah, perfect. We need a new word for retire because I'm never going to be retired.
No.
Yeah.
I'm more fired up now than I was 5 years ago to do stuff. And I tell you, when the doctor came in, my dad had a heart attack. He was 82 years old. He had a heart attack. They were trying to keep his heart ticking as long as they could. They did everything they could, and they finally walked in and he said, "Sorry, Lenny, there's nothing more we can do. You're just gonna about 24 to 36 hours, and then we're just gonna take you off the pump." And he goes, the thing he said just set me. He goes, "Darn it, I just wanted 10 more years." And he was 82. I love that. That's the coolest thing. And that's exactly the way I want to be. So everything is a go. But I gotta tell Chris, coolest thing in the world. You founded MapQuest. That is, that's so cool. I want to hear your story. And the thing I'm most interested in are your failures.
Yeah.
Because that is, success is a lousy teacher, as I say. I stole it from somebody else, and but it's just that's where I have become the expert, is because of my failures, not because of my successes. So how'd you do it? I was talking about our mutual friend, Megan Hickman, and she was saying that it started out like a hobby, like that was just like what you like to do, and dealing with maps and stuff.
Yeah, it turns out I have this, what you might call today a spatial kind of brain. I was just telling someone last week that I had never played golf till I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
But when I was 13 or 14, I used to design golf courses on paper.
Why? Yeah.
So I have no idea why. I remember before you go into high school, they take you to like the vocational technical tour. And I remember seeing the architects going, "Oh, I could be an architect." So obviously this mapping, spatial architect, golf course, like that's something that just is in me.
And were you a good student?
No, I was a terrible student.
Okay, good.
I didn't have the patience to sit and do 2 hours of homework.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, because your mind was going 1,000 miles a minute doing something else.
I was always doing 3 things in my head. Like a lot of us, took me a while to find my jam. Went to college for a year. I was way too young in hindsight. I turned 18 in December of my first semester. And so, I didn't get very good grades, not because I didn't know the material. I just didn't know how to play the game the right way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I totally get that.
Institutional machine that says play in this kind of way or you're toast.
Now, how much of that, Chris, was your parents or society telling you what you should do? And this is what you should do. You should go to college. That's what you do after high school.
Yeah. I don't remember like a bullhorn, but it was just the next thing to do.
Yeah.
Right? My father had gone to college. My mother hadn't. In hindsight, my 2 younger brothers didn't go to college. So it wasn't like, you have to do it, or it wasn't like a drum beat. I should also add that my dad we were talking about your dad. My dad had 3 heart attacks at the age of 39 in 3 days.
Wow.
And then had open heart surgery at the age of 40. I was 15 at the time. And he never worked a day afterwards. They gave him 8 years to live. He lived 38. But, the whole house changed, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, this is the mid 70s. Think about your dad. I think my dad would probably be he died at 78, probably about 88 now. So
yeah. What year was he born? Like my dad was 32.
I think he was born in 35.
Okay.
but it could have been 33. But anyway, somewhere in there. So similar, but think of a man who's responsible for his family and who's a professional, worked for Westinghouse and GE and this, really good middle manager. All of a sudden with three kids and a wife who doesn't work, who's a homemaker, is saying at 40 going, you can't work. You can't be who you want to be.
Yeah.
Right. So, there wasn't a lot of like, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. It was very much of a kind of like a survival kind of thing. So I go off to college, I screw it up, I don't do that great. I didn't party. Like I'm like the only guy that got bad grades and didn't party, right? Like at the very least, I didn't even get that right.
Okay, well, Chris, okay, let me throw the women in there. You got a little bit of women problem in there, maybe?
No, dude, I was like 5'5", 120 pounds. So.
Well, hey, I was 6'2", 120 pounds. So you got to get the two of us together.
Well, Charles, within 3 years, I was probably 5'10", 120 pounds.
Exactly,
I was on your trajectory, but
and I say that's because I got away from my mother's cooking and the cafeteria food was better, and I ballooned.
Yeah, food. Bringing it back to your listeners and the people who care about what you talk about. It's a little cliche, but life is a journey, right? And there's things you learn and things you go through in these experiences. And, obviously I wouldn't be able to be who I am today without those experiences, and I wouldn't change any of them for anything.
Right,
but, it took me, go to school for a year, drop out for a year and a half, decide to go back to college. My dad says, that's fantastic. This one's on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So now I'm responsible, right? Which is good. Now 19 or whatever. 20 maybe. And I was lucky enough to take a computer mapping class. Now, let's be clear, this is probably 1979 to 80. That means mainframe machines on like printers, right? Which are like the console. There's not monitors and there's no desktops and any of that stuff. That's still coming, 3 or 4 years later. But like a lot of it, there was something that went, ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
And so what I'll tell you, Charles, the history of MapQuest starts in that moment when I say, I like this. I want more of this. I'm curious about this. I'm going to lean into this. And what's amazing is I had a professor who was a young professor. Again, this is computing, in the late 70s, early 80s. And he wanted to figure out too. And we did it together. There wasn't really a professor-student kind of relationship per se. We were two peers trying to figure this stuff out, both curious.
Very interesting. Okay, so that was how the kernel got started. It didn't just like automatically become MapQuest, right? It took you how long did it take before you formed anything?
So to be clear, I just told you a story about somewhere in 1982. By the way, I learned how to write code as a geography major. So.
Oh, you actually were a geography major.
Yeah, so I was a geography major. 9 days after I got my undergrad degree, I headed the University of South Carolina, which was one of only 2 programs in the entire United States that had a graduate degree in like computer mapping. We now call that GIS.
Yep. And
I showed up and the lab gave me an Apple Lisa and a IBM PC, 2 brand new desktop machines, and said, so you told me you know how to write code, make them draw maps. Okay, so you're seeing how this thing's starting to layer. Yeah. Really, Charles, the rest of the arc is just about following technology and being smart enough to see that this new technology changes things. So go to work for the US government, State Department, help build a mapping system inside there off of PCs, get recruited to a large mapping company in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, right? The tech capital of the world.
Exactly.
55,000 Amish people.
Exactly, I was going to say.
But there's 50 to 60 cartographers there that need to be current, right? So we build mapping systems. But I started to see that this desktop computer, which was exploding, was going to give us some abilities to do something. So then we went into every auto club, AAA, all of them in the late 80s, early 90s. And we built them a better triptych. So you had to remember that, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. And we didn't have AAA growing up, but like our neighbors and I thought they were so cool because when they went on vacation, they came home with these little bound things of what to do. And then the next thing after that was, oh wow, you can buy a CD-ROM from Rand McNally and tells you every single place along the way that you can stop and yeah, I know it.
So here we are in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, sold a system to every single one of those auto clubs, PC and a laser printer. And then we took that and we built a CD-ROM 2 years before Rand McNally and sold the heck out of that. So we were 3 to 5 years ahead of all the kind of big boys in putting out product. And in 1996, February, we launched something we called MapQuest inside this big umbrella. Cartographers, software people, CD-ROMs. But by 1995, we were already turning off the CD-ROM and saying the internet's the way. So we were way ahead of the curve on everyone. To give you perspective, I later went and joined Ray McNally as a president, like 5 years later.
Oh, that's so cool.
And they were still doing, still had plans to do CD-ROMs all the way through 1999 and had no website, right? So, talk about Clayton Christensen, who writes about the innovator's dilemma. Yeah. The big boys are really hard to innovate. We were the nimble little David, just slaying Goliaths. Yeah. But it's because we had no fear, right? We're in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Who would expect a bunch of map geeks from Lancaster, Pennsylvania to do anything?
To rule the world. Gosh, that's amazing. So let me, you did this within the Lancaster, Pennsylvania company. Did you ever branch off and start, was MapQuest was just a product of that company?
Yeah. Now, that company did exist, but we created a kind of a sister company, which was the whole digital software part.
Right.
And then later we spun that out and brought in venture capital. So just like a typical startup, right? We had that kind of thing. So some people might call me, my first effort, a entrepreneur.
Yeah,
right?
You did it within a company.
You do it within a company. When I came out of college, I didn't know what an entrepreneur was, right? I just like to disrupt stuff. So anyway.
Now, was that first company of the right mindset, or did you get any pushback internally for, creating this, or were they all on board?
No, you're always selling something, right?
Yeah, you're always selling.
And that's, again, and I'm going to tell the story with the benefit of hindsight, but that journey was not unlike any other entrepreneurial journey, right? We had this big parent company, but we had to go to them and explain why we're going to lose money for a while. We had to get investment from them initially. Later on, we got it from venture capitalists. The rigor was just the same. We might have started with a few more assets than you would if you were a blank sheet of paper. But, I really think conceptually it was the same arc.
Okay, because I'm picturing it being like one of the biggest differences between you and like an entrepreneur is you had a paycheck coming in. That probably took a lot of weight off the shoulders.
It does. And that does change. And that is probably the only thing that I would say would be different. But I will tell you from a personal point of view, don't tell anybody. I've never cared about the money.
Yeah.
Certainly I like more of it than less of it.
Yeah.
And I like to accumulate it like we all do. But so, I know in my mind, I never made a decision based on keeping my paycheck safe.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, for whatever that's worth, maybe it's a healthy rationalization. I don't know.
Tell me about the VC. I've got, familial experience from that on my wife's side for her business. But man, they are just sharks. And how did that go?
Yeah. So I will tell you, I don't think they're sharks. I think you have to understand what kind of animal they are.
Yeah.
And as long as you understand the game that they have to play and you are comfortable with that, venture capital can make a lot of sense. the friction comes when you expect one thing and they're operating in a different way. And I learned this firsthand because after I left MapQuest, I joined our largest investor, and in the late 90s, and they gave me $25 million to say, hey, you know this internet shit, go get us more of it, right? And so I really learned how to then be on the other side of the money,
Okay.
on the giving side.
Yeah.
And, again, there's just as much pressure, right? Pressure is what we create for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
I'm new, I got to learn the language, right? It takes me 6 months just to figure out, how to write, put the right words in the right sentences and use their language. And I'm spending almost all my time in California, which is the mega, place for venture capital and at that time, internet companies. And then what I found after 3 years of that was that I hated it. And what I hated was the number of venture capitalists tripled in a 3-year period. And now there was a lot of people who really didn't understand business building, the things that I just gone through, the things that you think about and talk about all the time. And I didn't like sitting on board meetings with people who didn't know what the hell they were talking about.
Yeah.
And so I said, and again, I'm 3 to 5 years, and then I need to do something different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I am who I am.
It is such the MO for people like us. I mean, that's just the way we operate. So you get out there to California, because you got wooed by the big money and like, hey, flashy, you get to go out and do this 25 times over now. And it's just not your life. Did you have any successes out there, or what was that like?
Yeah, when we made some really good investments, and those investments, gave a good return. So from a business point of view, if you want to measure, if you want to use that as success, we had very good high returns. We provided a ton of value to our investors, the people who gave me the money. On a personal side, I learned a ton. I saw how, you go from kind of operating one company to obviously at a much shallower depth, watching, 15 companies you invest in and 300 companies that you look at. You get to see, they say venture capital is about pattern recognition, and you start to see patterns, right? And so there's tons of things I learned, so that when I decided to go back into being an operator, I brought a lot of those kind of things with me. So to me, personal success off the charts, right? And it was, you're also making a name for yourself, and you're being, you're meeting people and being connected, which is a good, foreshadowing for the future.
Now, when you were out there in that new role as the VC, how much of your experience or your expertise were you able to lay on those companies that you were working with? I mean, did you get right in there as a consultant, or were you just kind of a drive-by, expert and check in there? Like, did you get your hands dirty?
Charles, there's a reason why we connect easily. That's a fantastic question, and a question that's even more personal to me. During that time, the internet exploding, there's tons of money being put out. Most of the people, most of my peers, were living for the deal, right? And you get the investment and you get in, and then they show, they join the board of directors, and they meet every quarter, maybe sometimes every month, but whatever. And they, for a 2-hour period, they wax poetic about all of their brilliance, right? That they get to impart on the CEO and the team. I thought all the fun and good work should start after you do the deal, right? Yeah. That the mechanics of the deal were just the reason to get, into it. So my approach was, I'm here to serve you, CEO. You're not here to serve me. I'm not brilliant. You're brilliant. How can I help? What can I bring to you? Can I make connections for you? Can I help you find something? Can I be an ear when you are down or when you're up, right? And so I got frustrated that my peers weren't operating like that. I'll also say that realistically, you can't get your hands that dirty. the CEO and their team have to run the company.
Right.
At best, you're giving them maybe 2 to 3 hours a week at best. Your peers are giving them 3 hours a quarter, right? So the standard is that you can't get that involved. Good CEOs will let you get as involved as what they need, but you can't actually help them run the company, right? It's not your job.
Yeah.
Right? And it's their company. So there's kind of a really squishy answer to your question.
Well, no, but what happened, your answer tells me how similar it is in what I do with multifamily. For so many of these people out there, it's all about the acquisition. That's it. And once they buy it, they think, oh, I'm going to go home and now I'm a millionaire. No, that is where you separate the wheat from the chaff. You have to get out there and now convert that property into a business that is doing what you said it was going to do. And that's where a lot of these people fall down, is they don't do that. And so this whole concept of taking the entrepreneurial mindset to multifamily investing is so necessary, because people fail that way.
Yeah, I always chuckle a little bit when I hear this term like passive income.
Oh my gosh. Don't get me started. Chris, I have a website. It's now multifamilyinvestingacademy.com/passive, and all the words are separated by a hyphen if anybody's spelling it out. Passive investing is a scam. And that I created an online calculator because so many people are out there saying, hey, you're going to become a millionaire by passive investing. I said, passive investing is the multi-level marketing feature of multifamily investing. That's what it is. Only the people at the top make the money. The people at the bottom don't make a dime.
Yeah. And, put it this way, if you're going to be passive, someone else better be active.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So if not you, someone else. And if it's not you, then you're not in the game, really.
Yeah.
So.
That's so funny. I had this one group that was trying to pitch me on their deal. They had 17 GPs, 17. And that, what you just said made me think of it, because who's active? They're all thinking they're passive. Who's active? It's amazing. Now, let me ask you something else, because one thing that I've implemented in my business, I actually hired a fractional CSO, Chief Sales Officer. And I'm involved with Dan Sullivan, strategic coach, and I learned that at his course, that I probably needed a fractional leader of some sort for the things I can't handle. And so I hired this guy. And one of the big things is not a consultant. So this story is your story about being the VC for these CEOs is very similar to my situation, where he comes in and he runs my sales department. And he and I talk like he's an employee of mine. He's not a consultant. He's not a drive-by consultant. He's actually gets in there and solves problems. And I'm wondering if that's what the VC, what you were needing in that role, is to would have been perfect for the CEO if you came in and just solved problems for him that he couldn't handle.
Well, you're inching towards something that's one of my favorite things to talk about today. And it's even more today than it was when I was in this position, 20 years ago. And that is, I believe success is ultimately about having an active network and activating it on your behalf when you need to. And so whether it's an investor in your company, or whether it's your golf buddy, or whether it's a coach that you pay, or a contractor that you're working with, I believe success today is about building a very active network and then utilizing it, on a daily, weekly basis. And, to give you perspective, the last kind of startup I kind of talk about is I'm here in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina for the last 15, 18 years. And back in 2009, I'm reading about these new kind of incubator kind of things. We now call them accelerators, because you have to rebrand them, right, when you're doing something new. But they're basically new incubators where you take 10 very early stage seed software companies and you bring them in for 3 months and you give them mentorship on steroids, okay? And this has been popping up in Boulder, Colorado, and San Francisco. And I'm reading about those going, well, damn, Charles, if one startup is fun, 10 at a time should be a complete blast, right? Fuels my ADD perfectly. Now, there's the seed of the idea. Let me get to the point that I was trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is, I'm 3 years into Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. I figure if I'm going to run this kind of program, I need to know every potential entrepreneur, existing and future. I need to know investors. I need to know all the mentors that are going to come in and help me, right? And so in the course of 5 months, I had 275 one-on-one meetings. Okay. Coffee, lunch, or what I called an end-of-day frosty beverage meeting. And my goal is, if I'm going to use this community, this network, to help me help these 10 companies, I got to go out and find out who they are. I got to develop relationships with them. And I will tell you, at the age of 50, I feel like I've learned, this was, 2010, that I learned the most important tool that I could ever use. And I wished I had learned it 30 years before. And how to build and activate a network on behalf of whatever you're working on. And I think every person, regardless of whether you're an entrepreneur, multifamily, whatever it is, every person should be working, building, and activating a network on their behalf.
Oh, okay. All right. So this is really, really cool because Chris, you just gave me a huge idea for my business. Absolutely the coolest thing. This whole concept of the incubator. So give me an idea. You're saying that are you doing this now where you are bringing in these? No. Okay. You're putting it together.
I did it for 5 years and then
okay.
I moved on to something else.
Oh, okay. All right. You've already done this. Okay. Because this is the coolest thing. Tell me some of the things when these people came to you and they were in that, 90-day crunch time, almost like they got a semester of college with you. What were some of the things? What were the most important things that these guys lacked that you took care of, that you helped them solve? What was the most common denominator? What was the common denominator amongst all these entrepreneurs and their problem?
Sure. So like a lot of things, let me give you a little half step back to give you context. So these accelerators, which not exclusively, but primarily were for kind of technology-based businesses. And I'll tell you why in a second. The model is this: entrepreneurs, either future entrepreneurs or already running, or maybe probably within the first year or two of their business, they apply to be part of it. Okay. And that's a really key thing. They're already opting in to say, I want to learn more. They're already signaling that I need something from you. Our goal was, our program was, we gave them $50,000 for 7% of their ownership of the company. So why 50? 50 is enough to keep a couple people alive for 6 to 9 months while they go see if they can build something. Okay. 7%, not too big that I have any controlling interest or, I get to dictate terms, but enough that hopefully I'll get a return on investment at some point. Okay. Multiply that by 10. Okay. So we then go through a vetting process. Implied in your question is, what am I looking for? The first signal I'm looking for are the founders who say, the 50 grand's nice. What I really want is you and the network of people, experts, you're going to give me. And the idea here that I would encourage you to run with is, I really believe in like the cumulative, like the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts kind of idea. So my promise to them was, I'm going to introduce you to at least 50, if not 75 people with expertise from how to run a Facebook ad to how to set up your legal entity. Excuse me.
Bless you.
And so you can go find those 50 to 75 people on your own. It would probably take you a couple years. I'm going to do it all in 3 months, and it's going to be organized. And at the end of 3 months, we're going to put an event together, and you get to talk about this thing. You get to talk about this thing in front of another 500 people. So I'm going to put you on a platform, and each one of you is going to take a little something different out of it, but I'm going to create a network for you to leverage for years to come, if you're smart enough to do so.
Okay.
Rinse and repeat.
Okay. Now, when you were interviewing these candidates, did you look for people who had failed before? And tell me about your failures and how they got you where you are.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question because, all right, so there's two big questions in there. What was I looking for and what about me, right?
Yeah, well, you're looking for somebody that had experience in failure.
I'm looking for someone who has humility. I'm looking for a very healthy dose of self-awareness. They know who they are. They know who they're not. That they're not trying to kind of play the game. They're not trying to like cast a shadow that who they think I want them to be. That they're really grounded. And typically, by the way, Charles, you might have two people, usually no more than three, on the founding team. So not just individually, but I'm looking for how do they work together or not. So a little thing we do during the application, send me a 1-minute video about you guys. I say guys, but actually, 35% women and 35% founders of color. So very diverse group that we went after. And I'd say, send me a 1-minute video. And then I watch how they interact. And then during the interview, does one person do all the talking, or does he or she share the, are they ego driven or are they humble? And ultimately, if you peel back everything, the kind of people I want to work with and that I wanted to invest in are the kind of people who are curious, who know they don't know all the answers, but are on a journey and have a mindset to say, I'm on a journey of discovery. I'm going to ask questions. So that's where those 50 to 75 people come in. Imagine if you're a curious, kind of thoughtful person that's not pretending that they have all the answers, sitting there and get access to not just me and my partner, but 50 to 75 other people, and eventually maybe 500. And you use those people to go faster, quicker, better.
Yeah. Now, how often did you put this together with these, each, 90 days period? Did you do this once? Do that more than once?
Twice a year. And I ran 8 of them over a 4.5-year period.
Okay. And so how'd they do? How are what's the alumni doing now?
Well, of the 42, I believe there's still 7 or 8 in business as the things. Probably 4 or 5 got acquired, which is good.
Yeah.
I get to return dollars back to my investors and as well as my partners' pockets. Those people, some of those have gone on to invest on their own and others. So that flywheel that turns in the community, they I taught them what we call give first, which is, you give without any expectation of getting anything returned.
Yeah.
That's how I got those 50 to 75 people to come in. By the way, we're not paid, those mentors. They just offered to work with them and share their experiences, their failures, their wins, their, the things that they think are important. As importantly, it became a catalyst for Raleigh-Durham, which I now consider to be one of the top 10, if not 15 startup hubs in the United States.
Yeah.
So it was a real catalyst for that from 2010 through 2016. I made very good friends.
Yeah.
We're still friends today. People that I can, when I'm working on my next project, I could say, hey, can you give me a half an hour to come in and share your story with someone else, right?
Yeah.
Or, hey, can I interest you in being involved in this new project that I'm now working on? I mean, because we're always working on something else, right?
Now, was our mutual friend involved in any of that?
No, she's in Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay.
And I only met Megan just a little bit, probably within the last year to 2.
Yeah.
I am doing a project in Columbia now. It's the only project I have going on. So, but we also have mutual friends that we connected through socially and now business-wise.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap up by talking about this active network concept. Like, how can we implement that? How can we put it together? And how can, the people listening start taking advantage of that type of a benefit?
Thanks for asking the question. So the book that I just wrote, which is called Build a Fort, the Startup Community Builders Field Guide, kind of says that, not kind of, it definitely says, because I wrote it, I know what it says. It definitely says everyone should play a role in their city, the region, their community. If you're interested in helping entrepreneurs succeed, and that it's critically important for every city to have a very healthy startup community. Even if you're not a founder, you could be a mentor, or maybe you're an investor, or maybe you're just someone who's intrigued and wants to stand on the sidelines and watch and help a little bit. So the thesis of the book is that this is almost a requirement for every professional in every city to get involved, because it changes the economy and the arc of your own city, which we all want to be successful and, not burdened, right, with brain drain or, solo, only one manufacturing company in the city that's going to lead, right? We all want our city to prosper. All right. So back to the network. The idea is that the best way to do that, I love this phrase, spend more time connecting than coordinating. So don't try to do anything other than, I'm heading down to Columbia in a couple hours. We have every Wednesday coffee from 8 to 9. Anybody can show up, right? And show up and just listen and watch and ask this simple question: how can I help? Because everybody has an expertise in something. Everyone has their own small network of people. So imagine, Charles, that since we met a few months ago, imagine I'm sitting one day and someone says to me, I'm really interested in, the whole multifamily thing. And I'm like, I got a guy you should talk to.
Yeah.
And I make that introduction. And I make 8 to 10 introductions every week. Some of them I asked for, some of them just because I think you two people should meet. Imagine doing that over and over again every day. Imagine multiple people in the community, whether that's a geographic community or a community of interest, everyone interested in multifamily homes, right? Whatever the thing is, right? What I want you to picture is a network, and there's nodes and there's links. And your network can be, I'm going to geek out for a second, stay with me. There's two elements to this. One is connectiveness. How connected is our city? You might also think of this like the Kevin Bacon game, if you remember that, right?
Yep, 6 degrees.
6 degrees. What if a community is so connected and so supportive, and people will be willing to have a coffee with anybody with just a introduction? Imagine what the connectiveness of that city would look like. The idea you want to be no more than 2 hops away from anybody that would meet. Now, part of that is not just you networking, which is like transactional and yucky. And this is just hanging out with people, having a coffee, hearing what they do, hearing what you do, and seeing if there's a spark. Which leads to the next thing. So keep connected, build, spend time every week meeting new people, introductions from other people. You guys should go grab a coffee. And then the next thing, and where the gold comes is building meaningful connections. And I tell you, you're not going to build a meaningful connection with everyone. But every so often, right, there's 2 people when you sit down, maybe not unlike you and I a month or so ago, whenever that was, and you go, we're of like minds. Yeah. We have similar interests. We have a personality match. And we'll see where that goes, right? But when those exist and you help someone out, you find someone to do something, you help someone on their behalf, what we call give first. Oh my God, the magic that happens. And you can't engineer for that. And you can't, you can't prescribe that. Success will be a matter of N being the number of connections that you make and the willingness to be open to say, hey, I think you know something about, can you help me with this? And you may go, yes. You may go, no, but I know someone else that can.
Yeah.
And the network builds. And I will tell you, I've sat down, I don't know how to count, but in the last 10 years, I probably have sat down with 4,000 to 5,000 people one-on-one. And obviously, I don't even know who 90% of them are. But if I go, ooh, hey, do you mind making this, can I introduce you 2 together? I think you might be able to help each other out. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing, both personally as well as my community.
That's what Megan did for connecting us. Yeah. All right. Final thing. Tell me about your book.
I love cities that aren't called New York and LA and San Francisco and even Seattle and Atlanta. I love cities that, are kind of tier 2 and tier 3 cities.
Yep.
I've always been more comfortable being a bigger fish in a small pond. And I think the future economy of every one of those cities, I don't even put Raleigh Durham in that, that's now in the big category, but, places like Wilmington or Columbia or Tallahassee or, maybe even, Knoxville and Birmingham, Alabama. These places have to find a way to have organic, homegrown business building. It has to happen, right? Or they're going to fade away. And other cities have been active for years, if not decades, trying to make sure that there's a way and a place for kind of high growth companies and their founders to prosper, right? And the community has to come together. University researchers, economic development folks, high net worth families that make investments, right? And you have to create these conditions for entrepreneurs in your city. There's, I believe, somewhere around 2 to 5% of any population are founders ready to act, but they don't know how to act, and they don't know where to act, and they don't know how the game's played. Well, a good, healthy community that has access, introductions, right? That you get to sit there and say, I have an idea, and have a coffee with someone and say, all right, come here. Let me show you that we're all here waiting for you to help serve you and help you on that journey. It's just part of our community. So that's what the book's about, how everyone can play a role in their town in helping to foster that to the betterment of everyone.
Let me tell you, in my business, we've had a tough go over the last couple of years of finding good deals. And what investors are now realizing, in what you call the tier 2 and tier 3, we call, secondary and tertiary markets, is that the cash are in the crops. That's the term that people are saying, is get out of those big areas. You can find millions in the smaller areas if you just know where to look.
Yeah.
So,
and I would add, if you just know where to connect.
Yeah, exactly.
Dive into the pool, get connected, ask people for introductions, swim around the pool. Amazing things will happen.
I know, and you talked about it with nodes and links. I mean, you're talking to me like you're the old cartographer that you are. So I got it. I got the visual. Hey, Chris, it was so great having you on my show. I love talking with you. This is so much fun. I can't wait. And I want to talk to people like you, entrepreneurs, because that's what the multifamily OS system is all about, is the operating system for the entrepreneur that is the multifamily investor, that they don't even realize that they're an entrepreneur. That's the biggest problem. I'm trying to, bring them to it kicking and screaming, but I love it. So Chris, you're awesome, man. Thank you so much. And I can't wait. I want to read your book, and I'll probably have you back on because you're so much fun.
Sounds great, Charles. I can't wait.
Thanks, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.